What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another mini breakdown. This one's going to be a little bit different today. This was kind of my first rewatch of the Lions' second preseason game, but specifically I was watching for one player, and that player was Matthew Betts. However, after rewatching for Matthew Betts, it expanded a little bit beyond just a focus on Matthew Betts, and it got me to the point. Week 3 is going to matter a lot, so let's get it started. Welcome everybody to a video. Glad you guys are here, and yes, we're back with another breakdown video. Now, this is not the All-22, also different location here, so I'm just going to be throwing the clips over when I'm talking throughout this video. And back to watch for Matthew Betts in this game, who had the 1 sack, and some of that was the fact that we had the bet with Easy, which I said he was going to get 2 sacks when he got more snaps, and he got more snaps, and he didn't. He got 1 sack. He was close to 2, but he got 1 sack in this game, and that's cool. I'll do the hot sauce thing, but definitely was a step up from week 1 in terms of a game that he just got very limited snaps. But in those limited snaps, I walked away just kind of blown away by the traits. A lot of the things that we knew about him from the CFL, the quickness to get off, the agility, a lot of those things felt like they popped up in a very limited, small sample size. And then the bad popped up, like trying to set the edge. And I thought that popped up again in week 2's game. But seeing a larger sample size, it got me excited. I was like, I want to rewatch, see everything that he did in this game. And again, this is kind of just my first look back at it, how I felt about his performance initially and what that means for week 3 and kind of that position battle between kind of that linebacker position with James Houston, potentially a guy like Isaac Ukwu a little bit as well. Kind of that position that seemingly has opened up. And one of the biggest things that I walked away with was thinking, James Houston is not out of this race. Now, I'll talk about these things a little bit as this video goes on in terms of Matthew Betts setting the edge against offensive tackles, but looking a little bit better against pulling offensive linemen and tight ends off the backside. But if they're going to take things and add things to Matthew Betts' plate to be able to play off ball, look somewhat natural there in dropping in coverage as well, more so than a guy like James Houston did. And if they're going to limit the role of James Houston, they want him to set the edge and just rush the passer. He's going to have to not only look really good as a pass rusher week 3, but also show some ability to be able to handle his own on the defensive line, setting the edge potentially against offensive tackles as well. So I don't think that it helps James Houston that they take things off his plate and show that they put things on the plate back of Matthew Betts. Now, I think Matthew Betts helped himself a ton. You know, we talked about taking stuff off his plate, just letting him play as a pure defensive end, set the edge against a run, and that's an area that still looked like kind of a struggle in this game, specifically against offensive tackles at the point of attack, a lack of length. Though he did show that he could set the edge against the run, specifically against smaller defenders. He showed the quickness off the ball. He showed it off the backside. I think it fits a lot better for a Sam linebacker type of role where he could deal with tight ends more consistently. Downside against working against offensive tackles one-on-one to set the edge did show up a little bit still as an issue. So I walked away thinking that Matthew Betts helped himself, showed a lot of variety in terms of the way that he was dropping into coverage. He even had some off-ball linebacker reps, which wasn't a ton. And we're talking about taking stuff off his plate. It feels like now he helped himself because he showed so much flexibility in this game. But I still couldn't help but walk away and say to myself, I still think James Houston is alive for this. It feels like we've kind of counted the guy out. We didn't see him in our last game, but I don't want to get to that point yet. However, when rewatching for Matthew Betts, a couple guys stuck out. Isaac Ukwu in particular, a little bit of Mitchell Agude, and then also a linebacker. And even though this isn't going to be a linebacker video, I wanted to give him some love because it was his first game as a Lion, and that linebacker group has been just nasty. The Lions have replaced guys, and everybody they brought in seemingly just can play. Everybody can play. And not having Deron Gilbert, it was Ty Summers who stepped in this week, and I couldn't help but step back and be like, look, man, that was awesome. Ty Summers just looked so smooth, so calm, so collected. He played the run so darn well in this game as kind of filling in as like that will linebacker for us. I couldn't help but step back and be like, he looked really good in this game, in his first game in a Lions uniform. And whoever makes that linebacker position, it's going to be very difficult. But also who are able to get back on the practice squad at the linebacker position, I'm going to trust if he ever needs to get onto the field. And I think that's where the Lions are at right now. It is a great spot to be at with that linebacker room. We're not even seeing the guys that we're going to count on during the season. But let's start with Matthew Betts first and just a couple of my takeaways, and I'll show some overlay clips when watching it back. I think in a good way, some of the things that showed up back in the CFL that we liked when we did the Matthew Betts breakdown video did show up in this game. Now, I compared physically some of his traits to Aiden Hutchinson, just his build, the agility, which was spectacular, maybe not having the best length necessarily, and I thought that his best spot was going to be rushing from the interior. I thought that's where you could put a threat on guys, and I can remember in that breakdown video not loving his ability to attack the top of the rush, high side of an offensive tackle, consistently finish there as an edge rusher, and I think that showed up, unfortunately, in this this week 2 game for him, though he still showed the flashes of how he can win, and a lot of those traits were still able to carry over. Obviously, we saw the quickness, we saw the get off, we saw the lateral quickness, average timing, but real just quickness and burst, the second effort burst that he was able to carry to just go from stop to start, get it going once again. I thought he showed really fast hands in this game as well, and kind of a finishing ability to get himself clean and be able to give himself an opportunity to pile up pressures or sacks. He's got some of that suddenness, some of that urgency that a guy like Nate Lynn was bringing to the table, the little that we got to see of Nate Lynn. He brings that. Obviously, he's a very agile athlete that's very quick, in and out, stop, start, that kind of thing. I just don't think his pacing is always there. So I think sometimes you get him rolling through pass rush opportunities, and I think also you'll see him lose steam, specifically like we saw in this game, because he doesn't have a consistent bull rush, which was one of my concerns about Matthew Betts when we picked him up, is he doesn't really have that to lean on to win through an offensive tackle, and you'll see him kind of lose a lot of gas. Doesn't feel like he's creating a ton of leverage either. Instead, it feels very upright, and in that walk back process, it's more about the sudden shock that he can create so that he can work off of it, rather than a consistent knock back and walk back into the pocket. And then at the top of the rush, I thought there was very inconsistent results in terms of, can he dip the corner, right? Can he dip the edge if he feels like he has a step, or if the tackle gets out late? And he just didn't see that necessarily. The only time it really felt like he showed some of that was when the tight end chipped him and they started to send help, and they did. They sent him some help, and he had to work all the way around the offensive tackle, and he was able to pick up speed, gain ground, and be able to attack the edge and push the quarterback up the pocket. But in terms of being able to be a consistent threat there, a guy like Isaac Ukwu to really collapse the high side of an offensive tackle was much more impressive to me. Also showed nice footwork as well, and you'll see that with a lot of the inside wins that he has, the inside counter pass rush moves, the sack that he had, which was actually a stunt, where he was crashing inside to set up the defensive tackle to springboard back outside and loop around. And on that crash, he won so quickly, and it was so agile, so quick, that they had no chance to even pass that thing off. I mean, it was immediate. And there you got to see the fast hands once again. I also thought we got a nice chance to see his awareness as a pass rusher, like, hey, there's running back help, or there's a tight end chipping, and he wouldn't just play himself directly into that. There was a feel that was there, and he would try to kind of work himself away from those situations. We got a little bit of contact balance as well. Now, he definitely loses steam through contact, but in terms of being able to stay on his pass rush route and still be able to make something out of it, second and third effort, better than a guy like Isaac Ukwu, for example, where you don't see some of that lateral quickness or maybe some of that slither to continue. You see that with Betts because his feet are constantly on the ground. You'll see some of the agility there as well, but he's constantly kind of on the ground. He's not getting caught up in the air very often, so he's able to kind of bounce off guys and continue to work as a pass rusher. Overall, I walked away with Matthew Betts, and I'm definitely walked away feeling that this was a great step forward. This was a solid performance. It wasn't great. It was a plus, but I also didn't walk away when I rewatched it a couple of times and I started going through the editing process to put the clips together of like, man, this guy he's in, like he's making the team. I think the best thing that helped him was showing the flexibility in his game, showing the coverage drop, showing some awareness, because the second time he dropped in Tampa 2, he kind of felt like the inside tight end. He played it a little bit more because that's where they got attacked the last time. So you felt the awareness there as well. You felt the high motor that he brought to the table, and you got this sense of certain ways that he could win. But the flip side was like, okay, can he win on third and long? Can he win when offensive tackles are going into deeper pass sets rather than a 3-step set on the play? Like, can he win against deeper pass sets? And I don't think we got a consistent feel that he could actually win those. So we know we can win inside. It's just about opening up everything else. And I walked away from this saying this is a step in the right direction. But if he's going to make the team, I think next week has to be massive. And I think we're going to see him a ton in that game. That's kind of my conclusion for it. I think he may have put himself in a leader position to actually make this team once again with no James Houston out there and Isaac Ukwu just kind of being, I thought solid in this game. I think Ukwu being solid in this game, but there's some limitations there. Mitchell Agude, who made some nice plays, but I didn't think stood out whatsoever. He could have put him in a driver's seat to make the spot, but week 3, it's going to be about capping that off. And that brings me to Isaac Ukwu, who I was not going to talk about it today, but I have to give him some attention because he knows how to win. He is a very smart pass rusher, and I think that's very noticeable early. So if you wonder why a guy that's not the most athletic, he is a prototypical build for an edge defender, but he's not like the freaky athlete that's incredibly sudden or twitchy, or man, he is the most flexible guy like James Houston felt like. Instead, he is more so just a very smart pass rusher in how he sets things up, uses his long arm move really well. He rushes with a lot of pass rush control, string together pass rush moves, right? You get the long arm into the rip, which was very effective to get the top of the rush, and timing. He showed some real strength in the ankles to kind of work through contact at the top of the rush and be able to collapse the pocket a little bit. You would get some pass rush attempts that would just completely stall out really early on the play, but But the flip side is we saw him win early in the game. We saw him win from different spots. We saw him go in the interior and win. He knows how he wins. He's very controlled with it. And man, he's very smart. Like the play where he pressed the right tackle and he got him to shoot his hands. Then he kind of worked right off of that, right onto the edge of the offensive tackle, but understanding the timing and just having that nuance about him. That's what you feel with Isaac Ukwu. And I think that's why we're seeing consistent production, is because he knows exactly how to win. So there's going to be some limitations. There's going to be plays where he stalls out and he may not have some of the upside there. Now, while Isaac definitely has a typical build to handle tackles at the point of attack, we have seen him get jolted back, moved off a spot a little bit, and I think struggled to position himself a little bit with some of the lateral quickness in the lower body. So you just talk about upside factors there. Meanwhile, you see here from Betts, one of the best reps I thought of the game. You see that shock, you see that urgency, you see that suddenness in his game, that pacing there that looks good, where the fast hands jolts his guy, and then he's able to work off that, get himself clean, good hand usage there to find the break point, and then get after the quarterback on the play. And it's more about that suddenness shock that he needs to set up to get some of these pass rush wins. Plus, I didn't show it in this video, but he is definitely an effective stunt usage player, which we also talked about when we signed him out of the UFL, that he could be very effective in that area. But he also knows how he wins. You just kind of have to measure that against, like, well, what against starters is that going to look like consistently? And so those two guys stood out, but the last guy I wanted to give some love to before we get out of here, because again, I think that competition, that's like top of the list now for me to watch. Obviously, receiver position, we talked about that. Hendon Hooker did his thing. I think he's in line to be number 2 quarterback. All of those things, but, and you know, we'll have to look at the backup tackle position because those guys got tons of reps in this game. We thought Jones above Manu and Sorsel seemed to improve after what was, to me, a disaster week 1, but it was Ty Summers at linebacker. And however the Lions decided to separate it, because Ben Neiman still seemingly played really well. Jalen Reese-Maben for the limit, he was out there. He's going to be in for the Lions. Malik Jefferson, I think, has still flashed, but he's shown like some of the real like issues, like open field tackling, which can pop up for him, and some of the change of direction, those kind of things. But to me, it was Ty Summers. He didn't look overly athletic, like you could be a matchup piece in man coverage. So whenever he was in man, even the wheel route could have been caught if it was a better thrown ball, where it's kind of the stop-start on the play. That being said, though, the stop and go. That being said, though, when you watch him, like in zone coverage, you saw a lot of control. I didn't see him plaster routes a ton, which could be a little bit concerning, where it feels like he could give up some receptions rather than actually like, okay, he's making a play on the football. Instead, he's giving up the reception, but limiting everything after the catch. Like, he's going to be reliable in that sense, kind of like a Ben Neiman feels, but Ben Neiman did a nice job of plastering routes week 1. Beauplan came in and actually did really well as well. So I'll say that back to the linebacker room. Like, that thing is strong right now. But Ty Summers showed that coverage, showed a lot of reliability, showed a lot of feel, a lot of calm, cool, and collected, wasn't running himself out of plays, trusted the zone defenders around him, communicated really well for his first game with Beauplan. Could give a shout to Beauplan too, because he did the same thing. But then as a run defender, like the play that stuck out to me, seemingly he was in a Tampa 2 drop. That was his own responsibility. But he read the polar, and instead of opening up and taking off, which we've seen our line, we've seen our starters do that and start to get depth, he instead had the patience to say, okay, there's a polar there. Now this could have been play action, but he didn't drop out immediately. He waited, and it turned into a run play, and he was able to fill off the backside, get in on a 3-yard run stuff, right? We see our opposite linebacker shoot a field. We see his patience to say, okay, I'm going to read this out and make a play. And he was constantly around the ball. Then when he would blitz from that wheel backer position, he was just upfield. He was aggressive, and he was effective. He got around blocks, right? He got him on his backside, and he was able to spill a couple of run plays just like that as well. So we got to see a nice variety. I thought he was excellent against the run in this game, and that's the big thing that stood out to me was Ty Summers' debut was legit, and he is at very least threw himself in a conversation of like, hey, when this practice squad comes around, you might want to have me back on the team. We need to see another week, but my goodness, this was a strong debut for him. So overall, and he also had a really good blitz in this game. Not every time, but he had one really good blitz rep where he did actually create some pressure. The other time kind of got walled up by the running back, but he also got some pressure too. So overall, like to me, linebacker position's a battle, but that edge rusher position, that sandbacker role for the Lions, right? That, I mean, Josh Pascal showed that he gets some wins from the interior, showed some push-pull. He wasn't dominant, but he showed some push-pull, that kind of thing. Mekhi Wingo really settled in, especially for a guy on the interior that's not really built to play there. But technically last week we got to see like, okay, he gets it. It's just like, can we dial this in consistently? This week I thought there was much more consistency against the run. Wasn't a dominant pass rusher at all from first watch to me. Didn't stand out there whatsoever. But that's kind of like the bonus. It's like, hey, he's a very smart player. He's very, very fast against the run. You can see the reactiveness versus like Broderick, where it feels like sometimes he's caught off guard by the scheme and he gets hit by somebody that he wasn't expecting. You don't really ever seemingly get that vibe from Wingo. He gets a really fast feel, easy mover laterally. In this game, he settled down, handled some of the double teams well. I didn't think he was a dominant pass rusher, but he did that well, which was a great thing to see for a guy that's undersized, that technically speaking, he was able to dial it in and hold his ground against the run. So I think there's positives there when we get to that. Pascal's going to make the team too. But that position of James Houston, Matthew Betts, Isaac Ukwu, Mitchell Agude, next week's going to matter a lot because I don't think anybody's put themselves on a completely different category. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hopefully this thing stays short. We get some overlay clips, and we'll be back with some normal breakdowns in a week. With that being said, thank you for watching, and I'm out.